yes. From the way he took it, the new council, Bob and Cindy were having meetings outside of, wherever they go, and plotting to oust him. That's the way I took it, that's my understanding of what was going on.
But while you were in control or chair of the county council, did you sense there was any danger to Mr. Preston that he was going to be terminated by your county council?
No.
His concern, it sounds like, as it was relayed to you, was a concern that the incoming county council might do something to get rid of him.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, the incoming council was plotting against him. And he had a contract. Yes, I agree with that.
You looked for lawyers that might help.
I looked for lawyers who specialize in government. Okay, I did go to Mr. Warren. He couldn't touch it because he had a conflict. But he did advise me to seek counsel.
To find a lawyer.
To find a lawyer.
Let me ask a more specific question, and that's related to exhibit number 10.
Okay.
Do you agree with me that exhibit number 10 in front of you is an email that you wrote on October 22nd, 2008?
Yes.
And it looks like what this email is saying is that the county council basically deferred or referred Mr. Preston's claim to the personnel committee.
Yes.
Do you recall that? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay. So
I was acting alone
at first
as the chairman to defend the county against illegal action. So I was advised you need to seek counsel on the county's behalf. I sent out contacts. I can't remember if it was email or if it was phone calls. But I sent out emails, phone calls, or whatever I did, and I got responses back. And it came down to 3 guys, okay? During a council meeting, I called for an executive session. And we went to our conference room. I presented the information these 3 attorneys presented to me, okay? And we discussed the qualifications of those 3 attorneys. Bob sat here and he objected to everything, okay? Cindy was next to him, okay? We came out of that meeting, we went back to the council chambers, we called the meeting back in order, and there was, somebody made a motion to vote, or there were some motions made. Anyway, Mr. Bright was chosen to be the county attorney, not the county attorney, to represent the county in this matter. Now,
sounds like why you sent this to Mr. Bright, was he was going to help advise the personnel committee in dealing with it?
Well, that's where I was going. I can't remember if it was that particular council meeting, or if it was a following council meeting, but it was recommended by a member of the council to defer the matter to the personnel committee. And that's when Ron Wilson took over. And then I sent that email to Mr. Bright informing him of the actions of the council the previous, I think that's on a Wednesday.
Yes.
That's on a Wednesday. So that Tuesday night was when the council voted to defer it to the personnel committee. At that point, I was done, except for turning over the documents to Mr. Wilson, who was the chairman of the personnel committee.
Who was on the personnel committee at the time?
Ron Wilson, Larry Greer, and Bill McAbee.
And this was October 22nd, 2008, when the matter was referred over to the personnel committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or the night before, actually. It was
Yes,
referred.
yeah.
And what did you expect the personnel committee to do with this matter? What were they supposed to do with the claim that was raised by Mr. Preston? Were they going to evaluate it? Were they going to make a recommendation? Were they going to take action? What was your understanding of it?
Well, they couldn't take action without the full council. So they would have to make a recommendation to the full council.
Is that what you expected them to do?
Yes.
Make a recommendation?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not that's what they were charged to do? I mean, were they specifically asked to take up this matter and then come back with a recommendation?
Yeah, I would say yes.
And then, did you hear anything else about the personnel committee's work on this matter at any point in time?
About the work?
I mean, did they make regular reports back to you every week,
No.
every day? Or?
They made no reports back.
Okay. When is the next time you heard from the personnel committee about the claim that Mr. Preston had made against the county? What date roughly?
I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I mean, this might help, it might not, so feel free to reject it if you wish. November 18th, 2008 was the county council meeting where a vote was held on whether or not to approve a severance agreement for Mr. Preston. So what I'm wondering is, did you hear anything from the personnel committee between October 22nd, when it was referred to them for action, essentially, and then the county council meeting on November 18th, 2008?
As a formal report what was going on?
No, any formal, informal, any information that you received from the personnel committee about what they were doing?
During the process, it became apparent that Mr. Preston was going to leave as the administrator. So the personnel committee was charged with finding a replacement. That we just referred to, when that charge was made. Okay. November the 18th, as you said, what happened? And I was going to leave early. I asked my vice chair to come to my office. He was out milling about. And I said, I'm sick. As soon as we get down to the presentation part, or just before the presentations begin, I'm going to excuse myself because I'm sick. I'm going home.
And who was the vice chair?
Bill McAfee. Okay. He advised me at that time that the agenda was going to be amended because the personnel committee was going to make a recommendation to the council.
Was that the first time you had any information that led you to believe that the agenda was going to be amended for the
Yes.
November 18th meeting?
That was the first time I heard that.
Is that unusual?
No. Any council member can amend the agenda with a majority vote from council. However, it's customary to give the heads up to the chair so they can act as traffic cop and keep traffic flowing, So it's just basically a courtesy, and that's why I took it to be.
So when was it, Mr. McAfee met with you just before the meeting began, roughly?
Yes.
Within what, an hour, half an hour?
Yeah, half hour.
And that's the first information you received, that an attempt was going to be made to amend the agenda
Yeah,
and hear a recommendation from the personnel committee?
yes.
Was that surprising to you?
Surprising? I didn't know about it, so yeah.
So because between the time that the matter was referred to the Personnel Committee for consideration, the matter being Mr. Preston's claim for anticipatory breach of contract, and this meeting you had with Mr. McAbee just before the November 18th County Council meeting, had you heard any reports, formal or informal, from the Personnel Committee that they were accomplishing anything in their work?
After the Personnel Committee was given the task that they were given, and I was to hand off the material to Mr. Wilson, I made an appointment to meet with Mr. Wilson at his office in Howard'sville. I handed off the documents I had, whatever they were. Okay. At that time, I expressed to him my desire to see Mr. Cunningham take the helm. It was just a recommendation. So I made contact with Mr. Greer by phone that I thought Mr. Cunningham would be a good candidate. And it was just my opinion expressed, and they could take it or leave it, whatever they chose to do. But I felt it was my job to make my wishes or opinions known. They could do what they wanted to do with it.
Did you make those wishes known to anyone other than Mr. Wilson and Mr. Greer? The wishes about Mr. Cunningham taking over for Mr. Preston? What caused you to believe that there was a need to replace Mr. Preston at that point in time?
Just during the process of what was going on with that anticipatory breach issue, it became apparent that Joy was not going to remain in his position. Therefore, there was going to be create a need, a vacancy, and I thought Mr. Cunningham would be a good person to fill that slot.
Did you get any information between the time the matter with respect to Joey Preston's claim against the county for an anticipatory breach, between the time that claim was referred to the Personnel Committee and the time Mr. McAbee talked to you about amending the agenda on November 18th, 2008, did you have any indication or information that led you to believe that a severance package worth more than $1 million was going to be offered to Mr. Preston?
Yes.
How did you get that information? When did that happen?
The night before the meeting.
So up until the night of the meeting, you had no indication from any source that a severance package worth more than $1 million was going to be offered to Mr. Preston?
It seemed like I did. Because I knew Joy was going to leave. And he had been there 12 years, so therefore he deserved some kind of compensation for his time of service. That answer the question?
Well, how did you come to know that? Who told you that?
Who told me that?
Who told you that a package was being considered worth more than $1 million in severance to Joey Preston?
Mr. Greer did the night just before the meeting.
And the question was, did you have any indication or information that led you to believe such a package was in the works prior to November 18th?
Like I said previously, it became apparent that Joy was going to leave his post, and he would be given a severance package. It just became basically general knowledge.
How did you don't remember how you learned of that then, prior to November 18th?
No.
But it was general knowledge, you say, that a severance package of some kind was being considered?
Yeah.
Was that general knowledge amongst all the county council members?
I don't know what they knew.
Do you know who else knew it besides you?
I don't know.
And did you have any involvement in calculating the value of Joey Preston's claim for an anticipatory breach?
It seems like I asked Gina for some numbers, but I don't think I actually got them. I think the numbers that I eventually got came from the personnel committee. I don't remember any details about it.
Who was Gina? Or do you know what department she works in?
Finance.
Okay, so Gina, a county employee working in finance.
County administrator of finance,
Okay.
or something like that, or assistant administrator of finance. She's a head lady in finance.
Did you, and here's the question, did you have any direct involvement in
No.
trying to calculate the value of Joey Preston's proposed severance package?
The calculations for Joey's severance came from the personnel committee. I had no involvement in that, other than expressing my opinions.
Did you express any opinions about the value of the severance package to be
No.
offered to Joey Preston?
That was, I can't declare it 100%, but I'm thinking that's why I asked Tina for numbers. I want to make sure they mesh. But then again, Jen was providing the same numbers to the personnel committee, so they should have. But the direct involvement, no, I did not.
And do you recall whether or not you requested numbers concerning the value of the severance package to be offered to Joey Preston from Gina prior to November 18th, 2008?
Yeah, it was prior to November 18th, yes.
And did you do that in order to evaluate for your own sake whether you thought the package to be offered to Mr. Preston was fair?
Yeah, let's say so.
Do you know whether or not any other county council members had the same opportunity to evaluate whether or not the severance package to be offered to Mr. Preston was fair before November 18, 2008?
No, I do not know what they know.
Would it concern you as chair of the county council if one or more county council members did not have the benefit of evaluating the numbers concerning Mr. Preston's proposed severance package in advance of the meeting?
No,
Why not?
they should ask.
They should have asked.
They should have asked.
Did you have any knowledge of any negotiations that were going on, if they were, between Mr. Preston and or his lawyers and the county and or its lawyers with respect to a severance agreement for Mr. Preston?
No.
Did you have any involvement in any such negotiations? Between October 22nd, 2008, when the matter was referred to the Personnel Committee, the matter concerning Mr. Preston, and November 18, 2008, when the vote occurred on whether or not to offer him a severance package, sorry.
Okay. Can I take a break?
Yeah.
My brain is going. All these dates and numbers, I'm sorry.
Mr. Thompson, just to refresh your memory, exhibit number 10, we saw that by October 22nd, 2008, you being the county council had referred the matter with respect to Joey Preston's claim to the personnel committee, correct?
Yes.
And so that's October 22nd, 2008, and by November 18th, 2008, the county council had a meeting at which the severance agreement for Joey Preston was actually voted on, correct?
Yes.
So in that interim period between October 22nd, 2008 and November 18th, 2008, you applied for another job with the county, correct?
I don't know.
Well, and that's fair. Let me just show you exhibit number 11.
This is the buyer's position, I'm thinking, which Joey to the assistant purchasing manager's job vacates a buyer's position or creates a position. And so this is that one we've already talked about.
Okay, so this is the position that you had been told about by Mr. Preston back in August 2008.
August, yeah.
And now has come open and is being posted.
When did the assistant purchasing manager's job come about?
show you exhibit number 7.
Yeah. I applied for this back then.
Back in August 2008.
Okay, he said you can't have this because I need to promote, but it would open up down below, apply for that, and this is down below.
So this being the buyer position.
Yeah, this is the one that he had told me back in August.
And is this the one back in August 2008 that you believed from your conversation with Mr. Preston that you were going to get this job?
I did get this job.
But back in August 2008, you believed Mr. Preston was assuring you that you would get that
Yes,
job when
yes,
it came on.
Yes, this is the job that I subsequently got for about 10 days.
Okay, this job being the job of buyer.
Yes.
There's also did you have any conversations with Mr. Preston in November 2008 before the county council meeting of November 18th that you were going to apply for the buyer position in purchasing?
Joey told me to apply.
In November 2008?
No, August.
Okay, so back in August, he had told you
Yeah.
essentially when the position comes open, you should apply for it.
Yeah,
So that was already understood by you.
yeah. It was back in August.
Did you see this posting for the job somewhere around the date that it came open, November 13, 2008?
I'm thinking it was on the internet, on the website.
Did you apply for it as soon as you saw it posted?
Yes.
What about exhibit number 12, which is dated November 19, 2008, and it appears to be a posting for a buyer 2 position?
I don't know about this.
Okay.
Um,
Do you recall ever seeing that posting?
No. Well, we never discussed levels of buyer. You got buyer 1, buyer 2. We just always said buyer. So, in reality, I just knew there was a buyer position opening. And he said it's pretty high up. So, when I applied, it could have been for this one, it could have been for exhibit 11. I just knew I applied for a buyer's position. We never did discuss 1, 2 for A, B, or anything else. It was buyer. But he did say it's pretty high up.
The position that he was offering.
Yeah.
Did you care one way or another whether your position with the county would be a buyer 1 or a buyer 2 position?
Not really.
You just wanted to get a job with the county.
I needed insurance.
You needed health insurance?
I needed health insurance.
Did you also need the income?
Yeah, I needed the income, but the health insurance was the driving factor, or of importance to me, I should say.
And the job, either one, buyer 1 or buyer 2, the job paid somewhere in the range of $23,000 per year up to $35,000 a year, correct?
Correct.
Did you still have an understanding by November 2008 that you might be considered ultimately to replace the assessor?
Yes.
And that could happen anytime over the next 5 years?
Yes, sir.
So when you applied for the buyer position with Anderson County, after having discussed it with Mr. Preston, did you believe that you were most likely going to be employed by the county for at least up to 5 years?
Yes,
And then ultimately would take over the assessor job, correct?
that was my thinking at the time.
In the meantime, you had started, by November 2008, you had started taking the appraisal courses that Mr. Preston had talked to you about, correct?
Yes, yes. Back in August, I had asked Joey if, since I'm going into purchasing, do I need to take the appraisal courses? And he said, yeah, go ahead and take them. So I didn't know what he was thinking. He never did disclose to me. He said, yeah, go ahead and take them.
The meeting of November 18, 2008, during the meeting, a motion was made to amend the agenda, correct?
Yes,
By Mr. Wilson.
I don't remember, I just know it happened.
Okay. Would you agree with me that when you look at the agenda, the final version of the agenda for the November 18, 2008 meeting, there was no line item that discussed the possibility of voting on a severance package for Mr. Preston?
It was not on the original agenda, correct?
And neither was there any line item in the original agenda that said the county council was going to vote on hiring Mr. Cunningham, correct?
Correct.
Both of those matters happened by way of amendment
Yes,
during the meeting.
yes,
You were presiding over the meeting, were you not?
yes,
Would it be fair to say that at least two council members were upset by the way the meeting happened?
yes,
And ultimately, votes, you allowed, as chair, you allowed votes to happen on both severance agreement for Mr. Preston and an employment agreement for Mr. Cunningham.
yes.
Did you think that the process by which those votes came about was fair to the county council members who objected?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you think it was fair?
Robert's Rules of Order.
And did you ever go back to look at any county ordinances with respect to the procedure for preparing the agenda for county council meetings?
Yes.
Did you ever determine in your own mind whether or not the county ordinances governing the procedure for amendments to the agenda were followed?
Say that again.
Did you ever go back to try to determine in your own mind whether any county ordinances that might relate to amending the agenda of a county council meeting were followed
After this event or prior to this
at
event?
either time?
Yes.
Which
I
one?
frequently refer to the Robert's Rules of Order handbook and to the county ordinance throughout my time on council as to how I should preside.
I'm going to show you a couple things, Mr. Thompson, real quick, just to have you identify them for me.
Okay.
All right, first is exhibit number 13. You can identify exhibit number 13. What is it?
Severance agreement and release of claims.
Okay, so the first one, if I'm understanding right, is the severance agreement. That relates to Joey Preston, correct?
Yes.
And then the second one, exhibit number 14, what is that?
Master employment agreement.
Relating to whom?
Michael J. Cunningham, herein sometimes thereafter referred to administrator. I'm sorry, I messed that up. Mr. Cunningham.
Now, are these two agreements the ones that were voted on at the November 18, 2008 county council meeting?
Yes, they were voted on. Here.
After the meeting, did you go see Mr. Cunningham about the buyer position with the county? After the meeting of November 18, 2008?
Yes, I met with Mr. Cunningham on the 19th, that morning after this meeting,
Okay.
in his office.
Why did you meet with him on the 19th?
Because we need to sign this.
You need to sign the agreement.
We need to sign this.
Did you talk with him at all on the 19th about the buyer job?
Yeah, yeah. That's when we signed this.
Okay.
And then I brought it up, yes.
Okay, what happened on November 19th when you met with Mr. Cunningham with respect to the buyer job with the county?
He didn't think it was a good idea. He thought it was a conflict of interest.
Did he express that to you?
Yes.
What did he say about it was a conflict? What did he think was a conflict about you taking a
I
buyer?
voted on these two docs,
Okay.
and then working for the county. After that, he thought it was a conflict.
Did he indicate to you that he did not want to hire you as a buyer for the county?
No, he didn't say that. He said it was not he thought it was a conflict of interest for me to work for the county. He didn't specify any
positions.
Or period, just for any position at the county, essentially.
He just said it's not a good, he didn't think it was a good idea for me to work for the county after voting on these docs, because he thought it was a conflict of interest.
And by these docs, you mean the severance agreement for Mr. Preston and the employment agreement for Mr. Cunningham.
Yes.
What did you do after Mr. Cunningham told you he thought it would be a conflict of interest for you to work for the county?
Went to Joey.
And what did Mr. Preston do?
He said it was not a conflict of interest.
Did he hire you?
Yes.
Mr. Preston's the one who hired you?
Yes.
Do you remember what day that was?
Back in August?
You thought he hired you back in August?
Yes.
Did he ever have to formalize it by a written document of any kind?
Yes.
How was
There's a personnel action form or something to that effect that he completed before he left.
that Mr. Preston completed before he left?
Yes, Mr. Preston
Do
completed
you know
before.
what date he completed that form?
No.
Was it before January 1st, 2009?
Yes, that's before he left. So he left in December
2008?
2008.
Sometime in December, you think? What's your best recollection? When did you see Mr. Preston actually sign a personal
No.
action form?
I never saw it. He just said, I saw him out on the street somewhere, maybe across the street at Sullivan's, and he said that he had signed the PA out. And for me not to worry that I have a spot with the county. And that's as far as I took it.
Would you agree with me that that discussion you had with Mr. Preston, whether it was at Sullivan's or where it might have been, happened after the November 18th, 2008 County Council meeting?
Yes.
At the County Council meeting on November 18th, 2008, did you ever reveal to the County Council that you were actively seeking employment with the county before voting on the severance agreement for Mr. Preston?
No.
Would you ever reveal to anyone in the public who's available at the County Council meeting that you were actively seeking employment with the County Council, or with the county at the November 18th, 2008 County Council meeting?
No.
Did you recuse yourself from voting on the severance agreement for Mr. Preston because you were seeking employment with the county?
No.
Did you recuse yourself from voting on the employment agreement with Mr. Cunningham because you were seeking employment with the county?
No.
Did you think it was a conflict of interest for you to be seeking employment from the very two people that you voted on their agreements for?
No.
You said earlier that you had been advised, when in doubt, recuse yourself, correct?
Yes.
You weren't even in any doubt.
There was no doubt. I had already been hired.
Did you ever, are you aware of whether or not you ever actually showed up on the payroll as an employee of the county working in the purchasing department?
I received a paycheck.
Now let me show you exhibit number 16, which I believe you talked about in your prior deposition in the
Yes.
Cunningham case, but let me make sure. If you would look at exhibit number 16 and tell me what it is.
This is the pay stub that I received in January of 2009.
Okay, what does it tell you about your employment in Anderson County?
I'm a county employee.
And do you think this represents your employment as a member of the purchasing department?
Yes, that's the way I took it.
Why do you take it that way? What about it makes you think that this reflects that you are working for the purchasing department for Anderson County?
I received a paycheck, and Joey told me before he left that he had signed the document that hired me as a county employee, and then to take those courses, and then this paycheck shows up.
Would it have concerned you to be receiving funds from Anderson County to take appraisal courses if you were not even an employee of the county?
Would it concern me if I was not?
Correct.
Yes, it would concern me, yeah.
You would not, would you agree you would not be entitled to receive any county money for training if you were not even an employee of the county?
Yes,
And in fact, you continued to take appraisal courses into January of 2009, is that fair?
yes, I did.
Did you take any in February of 2009?
I think I finished up in February.
And those were courses that the county paid for, correct?
Yes,
And you thought you were a county employee at the time,
yes. I thought I was a county employee
in the purchasing department.
in the purchase. Yes, that's correct.
Did you ever do is this the only document that you believe shows that you were a member of the purchasing department of Anderson County? Are you aware of any other documents besides this pay stub?
There is a PAF. I never physically saw it.
Anything else you can think of besides the PAF and this pay stub?
No.
Do you recall, does it strike you as odd that you received no additional pay stubs beyond this one that's dated January 16, 2009?
No.
Even though you were continuing to take training into February 2009?
I thought I was a county employee, so no, it did not concern me.
And did you ever do the math to figure out what the amount of pay was compared to your annual salary as a council member? If you divide a council member's salary of $8,930 a year by 26 pay periods, you get $343.46, which is 1 penny different than what this pay stub shows.
Okay.
If that's the case, would you think this might be just your last paycheck as a county council member?
I never did. I never made that connection. I thought it meant I was a county employee with the purchasing department.
Do you agree that you were not receiving health insurance from the county starting January 2009?
When did I know this?
No, I'm just saying, do you agree that you weren't? Whether you learned it later or learned it then, I'm not concerned about that.
Yeah, I learned it later, but at the time I was receiving health insurance from the county.
And as you learned later, the reason you were receiving health insurance from the county was because Michael Cunningham was paying for it.
Yes, I found that after Mr. Cunningham was dismissed.
Did you have any understanding as to why Mr. Cunningham paid for your health insurance?
He's a great guy, that's all I know.
Exhibit 17, I believe is numbered. Yeah, it's numbered sequentially, plaintiff 619 through 21. Are these certificates that you received as a result of taking the various appraisal courses you took that the county paid for?
Yes.
Are these valuable to you personally?
No, I never did use it.
Never used the courses
No,
in any job you ever got?
no way, shape, or form.
Who signed off on the payments you received for taking the classes, the travel, per diem for these classes?
Jody did.
Why was Mr. Preston the one who signed off on you getting this training?
He's the one that hired me.
Had you received training through the county before as a member of the county council, before these appraisal classes?
Any kind of training?
Any kind of training?
Yes.
That the county paid for?
Yes.
What was the normal process for a county council member who wanted to receive training that would be paid for by the county in terms of who approved it?
The administrator.
And that was always the case?
For me it was.
Do you know whether it was always the case for other county council members?
I don't know.
And the county administrator was always Mr. Preston during your tenure?
Yes.
Typically, when you took the courses, the appraisal courses that you took, that Mr. Preston taught you about, typically you had to fill out paperwork that Mr. Preston signed off on to make sure you got reimbursed for the courses. Is that right?
No.
How did you get paid? Who had to sign off from the county side? Who had to sign off on paperwork to make sure you got paid?
Yeah. But Joey, I want to take these courses, or here are the courses you want me to take. Give me the information, okay, and then I think I talked with Teresa, and then it was approved.
And were there documents that had to be filled out?
Yeah.
And those documents where they needed a signature were signed by Mr. Preston.
Yes.
Let me show you what I think is just an example of that process. This is number 18. Do I have two tied together? Sorry. I have extras. I'm just showing you, Mr. Thompson, an example, what I think is an example of what one of these approval forms for being paid to take the classes, the appraisal classes in particular. If you take a minute and look at it and tell me if you agree that Exhibit 18 relates to your appraisal course training that you received.
Yes, it does. QE 5, 6, or 7 are the last three courses.
Okay. Now, QE 5, 6, and 7, those were courses that you took in December of 08, January of 09, and into February of 09, correct?
Oh, yeah. I think the last day was not February 1st.
And this, if you look at the second page of this document.
Second page?
Yep. Second page of exhibit number 18.
Okay.
That's what's billed as an Anderson County advance travel request, right? One page.
Okay.
And it's signed by the county administrator, Joey Preston. Would you agree?
Yes.
And it indicates that you are asking for advance money to take 3 appraisal courses, correct?
Yes.
So in other words, you're asking the county of Anderson to pay you in advance $2,749.80 so that you can take 3 courses that are coming up later, correct?
Yes.
Why did you have this form filled out and get that advance so far in advance of the classes that you take?
I was in the process of taking courses. And those were the courses he wanted me to take. I want to make sure we complete the process.
Did you want to complete the process before Mr. Preston was no longer available to you?
Yeah.
Because by January 1, 2009, or thereabouts, he was going to be gone, correct? So he wouldn't be able to sign these approvals anymore, would he?
Yeah.
Prior to getting this advance, your typical process for being paid back for these courses was more or less as you went. Would you agree?
Yes.
So you go to one class basically and then submit for reimbursement for the one class.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And Mr. Preston would sign the paperwork to make sure you got paid back.
Correct.
And then when this time came at the end of November 2008, you made sure to get $2,749.80 all in advance, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever ask Mr. Cunningham if he would approve the advance of $2,700 plus?
No, I went to Mr. Preston and said, asked him how he wanted to handle this. And he said he'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, this paperwork was provided, or at least a check was provided to you in the amount of $2,749.80, correct? Did you have to sign off on the form, Exhibit 18?
I don't think I did. I think I just asked Joey how he wanted to handle this. And he said he'll take care of it. And then I received a check to go take courses. So I just continued, going down to Columbia and taking these courses until they were all taken.
How would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Preston today?
Today, I haven't seen Joey in months, so
Okay.
I would say we have a relationship.
How would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Preston in 2008 when you were the county council chair?
He was a friend in addition to being a county employee.
And did that relationship continue after you both left the employment of the county? Would you characterize yourselves as friends after you both left the employment of the county?
I would, but we haven't seen each other in months, so.
Were you ever involved in any business relationship with Mr. Preston of any kind?
No.
Are you aware of any business ventures that Mr. Preston was involved in?
No.
how would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Preston in 2008 when you were county council chair?
He was a friend in addition to being a county employee.
And did that relationship continue after you both left the employment of the county? Would you characterize yourselves as friends after you both left the employment of the county?
I would, but we haven't seen each other in months.
Mr. Johnson, my name is Lane Davis, and I represent Joey Preston in this lawsuit. I will endeavor to be more or less long-winded than
Okay.
Can you please turn to Exhibit 3 to start out?
Okay.
During your testimony earlier this afternoon, in relation to questions pertaining to Exhibit 3, you referenced some letters that were sent that were of a harassing nature. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Tell me more about those letters.
Each member of council, except for Cindy Wilson, I'm not sure. No, Bob Walker was not on the council at the time. Or was, anyway, the majority of the members of council, except for Cindy and Bob, received letters at their home saying how someone's going to sodomize you because you're on the council and not doing, they were threatening letters. Or you're going to line up in prison where you're going to get sodomized, and they're very disturbing.
As early as August of 2007, people were referencing prison in these letters to county council members.
Yes.
Were the letters otherwise threatening in nature?
Yes.
Did the letters cause you pause?
Define pause.
Did they worry you?
Worried me, scared me, pissed me off,
All of the above?
all the above.
How about the other council members? Did they scare the other council members?
From what I understand, they were, yes.
With the exception of Councilwoman Wilson, of course,
Yes.
because she didn't ever get any harassing letters.
Right.
When did the harassing letters start? Your fault.
That was the only letter that I received at my home. There was another time where a reference was made over the radio where I about to check my homeowner's insurance, which I took as a threat against my home. But I don't remember the date.
Do you recall any other instances of harassing behavior that either related to yourself or other members of the county council, Mrs. Wilson excluded?
Other harassment against other council members? Is that-
Yes, sir.
Yes, Miss Floyd was followed home one night and basically almost ran off the road.
Do you have any idea who was participating in these acts of harassment?
Person or persons were never identified.
Was the county administrator a target of such harassing behavior?
Yes, he was frequently targeted, from what I understand.
Was he followed?
It was my understanding he was followed, yes, sir.
Was it common knowledge among the county council members?
Yes, sir, it's common knowledge.
Were the county council members experiencing the same type of harassing behavior?
I mean, similar to what, Joy?
Yes, sir.
I think Joy received a higher degree of harassment.
Joey's was worse.
Yes, I would think so.
Do you know whether the harassing behavior scared Mr. Preston?
Yes, he had Bill Struett, who was the chief security officer, to basically follow him wherever he went.
Does Mr. Preston have two young boys?
Yes,
at the time was married?
Yes,
Was the harassing behavior that we're talking about occurring while he was living with his two young boys?
yes.
Do you recall any other instances of harassment that was directed towards Mr. Preston that are along the same lines?
Direct knowledge or hearsay or anything, or
Sure. Anything.
there was one incident that came to mind where Will, that's the older son of Joey's, answered the phone and really,
What is your understanding was said to Mr. Preston's son, Will?
I don't recall.
Was it threatening in
It
nature?
was threatening in nature, and the 10-year-old boy shouldn't be hearing such stuff.
Were people calling Mr. Preston's house?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Were they threatening his kids?
I don't, they wouldn't threaten his kids per se. Will just happened to answer the phone. Some, if I can say jerk, was just calling his house and Will answered the phone.
It sounds like an appropriate description.
Okay, but anyway, I remember Joy talking about it.
Do you recall a point in time where Mr. Preston and Councilwoman Wilson started to butt heads?
To me, it seemed like they were butting heads from the first time I met council. I was on council, so.
And the relationship between the harassing behaviors that we talked about and the voters who support. Do you believe there's a correlation between the voters who support Ms. Wilson and the harassing behaviors we just talked about?
Yes, yes.
What is it?
Same objection.
It is my understanding that, well, it's not my understanding. I know that Ms. Wilson is a member of or associated with the Anderson County Taxpayers Association. I know this because when I first was elected to council, I was also connected with the Anderson County Taxpayers Association. And we would meet at Mr. Crow's house, that's Charles Crow, and Cindy Wilson would call in over the speakerphone, and we would have a meeting, if that's what you want to call it. Okay. And it's common knowledge. Just turn on the AM radio, and you can hear members of the Taxpayers Association. It's always the same handful of callers calling in, either belittling the council or belittling Mr. Preston because we were not following their dictation. So that's what I understand is going on.
Did the acrimony between various county council members, Mr. Preston and Councilwoman Wilson, ever spill over into open meetings?
Oh, yeah.
Did it ever spill into decisions that were being made by the county council?
Yeah. Basically, if Joy wanted it, Cindy didn't. That's basically where things flow.
Let me show you what I'm going to mark as our next exhibit. Well, let me show you the actual exhibit. I'll show you later. I'll show you this email chain in which you were included at the top that dates from February 20th of 2008. And what I am interested in asking you about was, does this bottom email reference a specific project
Yes.
Do you recall the instance of the developer on this Powdersville commercial project expressing concern about the county council's inability to get along?
Say that again.
Well, let me refer you to the body of the February 20th email down below. In the middle of it, it says, and I quote, "He was very concerned over the Midtown Center project incentives and how this project is being handled on council floor," end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you recall in February of 2008 whether there was concern on your part about the inability of county council to get along, actually impacting economic development in Anderson County?
Yes, yeah, that was a big concern with the majority of council. The acidic nature that existed on the council floor, and especially between Mr. Waltrip, Cindy, and Joey, and that it was harming economic development in the county.
Was the acidic environment potentially threatening economic development?
Yes, yeah, it's my understanding it was.
It's previously marked as Exhibit 4. Can you look at that for me, sir?
Okay.
If you recall, Exhibit 4 was the March 4th, 2008 email between yourself and Mr. Preston wherein you referenced the appraisal courses. The question I have is, and maybe it's an obvious one, but did the conversation between yourself and Mr. Preston about your working for the county occur prior to your sending this email?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall how much prior before you sent this email?
No.
You referenced that you contacted Mr. Freeman in relation to obtaining information about appraisal courses. Do you remember that?
I spoke directly to Mr. Freeman about the notebook. Mr. Preston contacted Mr. Freeman to provide me the notebook.
When you were contacting Mr. Freeman, was there any attempt on your part to conceal that you were interested in pursuing appraisal courses?
No.
You were completely open about that, weren't you?
Yes.
Was the first time that Mr. Preston asked you to consider pursuing appraisal courses in and about March of 2008?
Yes.
Were the primaries for the 2008 election before or after this email?
Absolutely.
When were they, do you recall?
I think in June, July.
So approximately 90 to 120 days before the primary ever occurred, had you spoken to Mr. Preston about going to work with the county?
Saying before the primary, did I speak to Mr. Preston?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the answer is yes.
It was about approximately 90 to 120 days before the primary even occurred, right?
Yes.
And at that time, did Mr. Preston ask you to consider pursuing the appraisal courses?
Yes. He brought it up into conversation, yes.
Did Mr. Preston tell you at that time why he felt like you were a good candidate for a job with the county?
Yes, he did.
Was it because you are a veteran of the United States Navy?
No.
Was that in part one of the reasons?
Could have been. I remember specifically it was my master's degree and my experience in real estate. And that's why he recommended the assessor's office. And that's when he recommended the appraisal courses.
Did you also have 9 years of purchasing experience?
Yes.
Did you also understand the inner workings of Anderson County?
I hope so. 4 years on the council, I hope so.
Or during your earlier line of questioning, you mentioned some non-profit organizations where you served on the board. What were they?
I served on the board of directors for the Anderson Area Chamber of Commerce. I served on the board of directors for the Appalachian Council of Government. I was on the Economic Development Committee and an alternate for the Executive Committee. I served on the something Anderson, mind slipping, something Anderson, Interact Anderson, Activate Anderson, in which I served on the Executive Committee. I served on the Board of Directors for the Work Link Investment Board. It seemed like I'm leaving something out, but it's not coming to me. On WorkLink, I was on the Administrative and Budget Committee.
Let me turn your attention to Exhibit 5. First question, what time of day was this email sent by you to Mr. Preston?
5:43 p.m.
Second question I have for you is, did Mr. Preston specifically respond to this email?
He scolded me.
Did he tell you not to use
Yeah,
county emails for this type of request?
yeah, he scolded me.
Did Mr. Preston actually use his personal time with respect to any efforts he may have?
That's my understanding.
Do you have any knowledge of any time when Mr. Preston used public resources or public time to help you with your campaign?
No,
That didn't happen, did it?
not to my knowledge.
Can you look at Exhibit 7 for me?
Okay.
I may be missing it, but does your name actually appear on this?
I don't see it.
Is it omitted because, as Mr. Preston told you, you were going to be considered for this position?
That was my understanding, because he needed to promote from within, or well, he needed to promote people, I should say.
I want to turn your attention to Exhibit 8, and also,
8?
yes, sir, and also to the August of 2008 timeframe. And I'm going to ask you some questions that I'll apologize for in advance. I mean no offense by them, I just need to know the information. When you were asked about Exhibit 8 earlier, you testified, and I quote, that you needed a job in the book. Is that right?
Okay, yes.
Were you having financial difficulties at the time?
I need insurance when I come off of council.
Why did you need insurance?
We have lots of medication that we need to buy
For what?
for my wife.
What's the matter with your wife?
High blood pressure, we go on just ailments.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any yourself?
Yes.
What is your health problem?
Acid reflux, they call it GERD, heart palpitation, SVT, high cholesterol.
At this point in time, you needed employment, correct?
Yes.
Did Mr. Preston know you needed employment?
Yes, I spoke to him back in March.
Were council members Wilson and Waldrop the type of people who would, or were known to disseminate confidential information to the public when they should not have?
Yes, yes.
Did council member Wilson ever disseminate information that you believed was confidential?
Yes,
Did you do it publicly?
yes,
How about Mr. Waldrop?
yes. Can I go into detail?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Preston's personal credit card number was disseminated, and that wound up on the Anderson newspaper, Anderson Independent Mail website. Okay. County credit card numbers in general were disseminated, and they ended up spread out all over county. Those cards had to be canceled, and new cards had to be issued. There was an issue where, as chairman, I disseminated some information to council, and I purposely marked it confidential, with a red stamp. It showed up on the Independent Mail's website with a confidential stamp on it. So here you have a confidential document marked confidential on the website, and had no business being marked. So it was knowledge that they disseminated stuff that they shouldn't be disseminating.
You'll stop it.
Now, as of August of 2008, was your financial position something you felt the public needed to know about?
Wait,